and vulnerable inmates becoming victims of grave violations of human rights by mafias and corrupt practices. So this is something that we see corruption does at every level of our society. And of course, because the most vulnerable groups are also the groups that are most reliant on public services and goods due to a lack of alternate private services, they also bear the greatest brunt of corruption. Consequently, the government's measures for democratizing healthcare and education through our measures such as the health card, the Sehat Sahulat program, or the single national curriculum finally in our education, these are vital to ensuring that public goods are accessible to all those who need them the most, rather than remaining at the hands of a narrow elite or being impeded upon by the corrupt mafias that prevail in most societies. The Ministry of Human Rights also launched Pakistan's first National Action Plan on business and human rights, and I'm proud to say we are the first country in South Asia and the third in the entire Asia for having a national action plan on business and human rights, because this plan includes financial transparency and anti-corruption as a priority area. Our National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights provides a solid foundation for steering Pakistan's economic development while placing human dignity at its center. It includes critical recommendations such as the financial transparency of companies who are being considered when they make bids for government projects, and a steering committee of the Business and Human Rights National Action Plan has now been notified, and we will be meeting this month so that we can begin fast-tracking implementation of this plan, which we see as a vital tool, not just in furthering human rights of all members of our society, but also fighting corruption actively at the state and business enterprises level. So this is something that we are now progressing towards. We all know that the state has an obligation to protect those who are involved in ensuring its transparency, in ensuring this transparency. In other words, what I'm saying is the state also has to protect those people who investigate, report, or prosecute corruption. Again, our government's Journalists and Media Professionals Protection Act, which became law a few months ago, seeks to promote, protect and ensure the independence and freedom of expression of journalists and media professionals so that the ills of society can be exposed and mitigated through actions. In fact, Section 3 of our Act reiterates that journalists and media professionals' right to carry out their journalist work without threats, intimidation, harassment, or fear of persecution or targeting. However, while we can deal with these issues at a national level, we are also seeing the insidious ways in which national and international boundaries are exploited for corruption, with individuals laundering, money laundering, embezzling funds and hiding in foreign jurisdictions. Criminals enjoy staggering safe havens, especially in developed countries. The Pandora Papers are a glaring example of this, exposing the wealth accumulated through tax evasion, corruption and money laundered out to financial havens. The UN Secretary General's panel, FACTI, calculated that $7 trillion in stolen assets were parked primarily in offshore tax havens. Yet international cooperation procedures amongst law enforcement agencies and prosecution authorities remain woefully slow and ineffective. It is crucial to ensure the repatriation of proceeds and strengthen mutual legal assistance, extradition and other such measures to put an end to the safe havens that provide a way out for the corrupt to safeguard the corrupt assets gained through corruption. It's also clear that this is not money laundering is not something that is limited to a few countries in certain parts of the world. It's a phenomenon across the board. The United Kingdom in 2020 announced the creation of a new sanction regime which was established under the Sanctions and Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2018. Through this regime, a framework was established and still remains established to impose sanctions on individuals or entities that are, in the judgment of the UK government, known or reasonably suspected to be in human rights violations. Ironically, the most high-profile cases remain uncharged under what was meant to be a robust anti-laundering law. So one can ask quite reasonably and rationally, why, when the UK has brought about its law, why are they not acting on it? Why are the corrupt still being sheltered? Why are funds from money laundering allowed to go unchecked and reinvested in the United Kingdom as well as in the safe havens under the protection of the United Kingdom? And this is just one example, that there is a lot of talk on dealing with corruption, money laundering, but on the ground, nothing much is happening, and that is our greatest challenge, I feel. And as a collective entity, the OIC has the power and the resources to change this slow, ineffective process to deal with money laundering and corruption. I also want to point out, I'm not a diplomat, so if I say something undiplomatic, do excuse it, but FATF also seems to have moved away from its original focus on money laundering and illegal financial transfers to just focusing on terrorism and funding for terrorism. Yes, that's a very critical aspect, but FATF also needs to take cognizance of the safe havens where money laundering continues to be held, putting those countries and those political entities that provide safe havens.
इस्लामाबाद में वफाकी वज़ीर बराए इंसानी हुकूक तकरीब से खिताब कर रही थीं और उनका ये कहना था कि करप्शन की वजह से सारे शोबे मुतासिर हुए, हुकूमत करप्शन के खात्मे के लिए कोशां है।